Greetings and salutations, my fellow sovereigns. Welcome to the Vocational Science Freedom Saturday night civics and sovereignty class. And tonight we are going to be covering community organization. So this is self-reliant communities and what you need to do in a step-by-step manner in order to organize people together in your community and the various different activities, creations, organizations, and tasks that you can do with other people in your community in order to make sure that that community is self-reliant because of the importance of what is coming. The destruction of the food supply chain and the just ridiculous price of gas that's going to continue to go up. And for all these reasons, we need to not just be prepared of our own self and our own family, but also make sure that our community is well prepared and organized, because no man is an island. And this constitutional republic, yes, is very much about individualism. However, it's also very much about your community as well. So, with that, if you'd like to join the Vocational Science Freedom Gilded server and participate in our classes, you can do so by going to the Vocational Science Freedom YouTube page and clicking on the banner in the upper right hand corner, which is the VSOF Gilded server. When you click on this, you will be prompted to answer some questions, which are just some simple vetting questions, and then you will be able to join the server as soon as I go through your application. You can also join the Vocational Science Freedom on Odyssey at odyssey.com at VSOF:8, where we also post all of the rest of the online classes Saturday and Wednesday nights, particularly the ones that we cannot post on YouTube because of censorship. So with that, the link to the outline for tonight is in the Gilded server chat. You'll also be able to find it in the show notes for this class. And so let's open that up and let's go through tonight's organization. So first off, this class will cover what everyone in America can do to make our community more self-reliant, self-sufficient, and protected by the law and order of the common law of the sovereign people of that community. So what do I mean by that? Well, we'll get into that later as far as organizations are concerned, but if you've been here for a little while at the Vocational Science Freedom, you'll understand the differences between the jurisdictions of Roman civil law and our American jurisprudence, which is based upon the adoption of the English common law system, but altered to fit our sovereignty, as that we ourselves are sovereign and that we determine what happens in our community step by step by the organization of a grand jury and by the protection of the community by local militia or even neighborhood watch groups, or what a new term recently that I was introduced to is called a mutual assistance group. So these are three different terms that you can use to basically describe the men and women who are willing to do what they need to do to defend their community. That's basically what it gets down to. So if you want to open up the mega link, you can do so here. And I just have a few pictures along with this outline in it, so anyone can take a look at that and download it. I will also upload some more information into this particular folder for tonight's class that I didn't have a chance to do. I will upload more information as far as flyers, as far as schematics for some of these buildings, and also some other documents that will relate to what we're talking about tonight. So in the outline, first thing I sectioned off was community learning. Second was food production. Third was food storage and preservation. And then fourth was community self-defense. And in the community learning thing, the first thing I just had up here was the aspect of putting up your own library boxes. Now, if no one knows what a library box looks like, you can click on the link, and this is just a link that I pulled up to SD. If you want to see what they look like and be able to just purchase a kit, which is, some of these I think are overly expensive, obviously, but I just want to show it as an example that if you wanted to, you could just buy a kit and do this. And where you put them is on your property, but close enough to the sidewalk so that people can access it. And what these allow people to do is to share books. Sometimes you'll have people put books into it, but you can also put books in yourself. It also gives you a chance and an opportunity to put up flyers as well. You could have a side space for flyers if you wanted in a little side section. You can put in flyers for the VSOF if you want to. You can put in flyers regarding the Second Amendment. You could put in flyers talking about the grand juries, anything you want. So it's a way to show an area or in a community that, okay, this community is interested in perpetuating knowledge and literacy. It's also fully aware of its own rights and freedoms. I mean, if you could go so far as to put a Gadsden flag on the top of your little library post if you wanted to attract the right people. And also, you'd want to decorate in whatever other way you'd want to show what you're promoting as far as what you feel people should be learning in a community. And I think I put up also a picture in the mega simple picture. They don't have to be too big. The thing that you want them to make sure is that, and they don't have to be metal either. They can be wood. Just make sure that the roof cover comes over the top, so it makes sure that it can't rain into or get into here. So make sure that it's waterproof on the outside and top and has like a little roof on it. And then the door can be whatever you want to. And as you saw, I'm sure of some of these get pretty elaborate. Now this is a pretty large door. This thing's almost literally like a walk-in. Doesn't have to be that big, but just something with a couple shelves or something with multiple shelves is fine. And you could also put on the side of it. I've seen people that even put, say, chalkboards on the side of these. And as long as the chalkboard's covered, you can write whatever you want to on a daily basis or have like a daily message on them for people that walk by. If you live in a city where this is, obviously able to be done. Things like this are not something that you would put, say, out in the middle of the country where you don't have a lot of people. However, if you do have a very busy road that you live on in the country and you're willing to have people pull into your driveway and take a look, that's fine too. You can do that. There's a lot of different ways that you can use these little guys to perpetuate knowledge. So that's just a good, simple way to start a community awareness as to what you want to put out there. So, and by the way, you can put in the VSOF contact flyer if you want to, which is all of the information as far as the links to the VSOF. So they could just grab a flyer, go home, and yes, of course, they'd have to type in the URL, but no big deal. And they can put in the information and go to the VSOF Gilded server and the VSOF YouTube and Odyssey and the Gab posts and start learning their proper civics so that that they know what's going on in the community as far as their rights are concerned. Also, what you can do is you can have local VSOF meetings. I have no worries whatsoever about people that have already joined the Gilded server to go ahead and have their own meetings discussing the information that you learn here. It's perfectly natural to do that, and you should do that. Then you can also bring people over for, say, a dinner, or even you get something large, a larger venue. You can have people have like a little potluck, and you have a discussion about what you learn at the VSOF. The importance of understanding the 4 quadrants of sovereignty. And when you do that, you're promoting a connection in the community and allowing people who may not be so tech savvy as to be able to, jump on or even be interested in jumping on a class like this online, or who might not even very often get online at all, say the older generation. But not to say they're not important. Of course, the older generation is the generation that we are going to have to look to and learn from regarding particularly these older skills where everybody back in the Great Depression knew how to do all these various different things, grow your own food, preserve it, dry it, so on and so forth. These older members, older, wiser members of the community would be a great resource, and not to call them a human resource, but their knowledge is definitely a resource that has almost been lost, and it's better to make sure that they are brought into the community meetings and also make sure that they have full reign of the floor whenever they want to speak about how to do these various different things, and or have classes with them. Have them be able to teach classes about what they know. Okay. So that's doing meetings, and then your local library. So check out and find out your local library, see what they have available for what, as far as meeting rooms are concerned. Most libraries have a meeting room. that you can use, and it'll seat most of them that I've seen can seat about 10, maybe more than 10 people, but at least you have a meeting room that has about 10 people that's separate from the rest of the library, so you're not bothering anyone. You can hold your meetings there. Also, at local libraries, look for books on Self-Reliance and then share those books with other people and make sure that they know that they're there and where to access them, so that at least people can go and make some photocopies of maybe recipes or designs or whatever else they might need, just in case you don't have your own library set up. However, obviously anybody who's a member of the VSOF has access to the VSOF Mega Library, and that contains all of the books you would ever need on Self-Reliance. Okay, next thing, food production. So seed banks. Now, if you don't want to put all the effort into creating your own seed bank or haven't yet learned how to properly save seeds, that's okay. There are very large seed banks that are out and about in the community. One of the largest ones in America is Seed Savers, and I put the link into the outline, and I'll put it in the chat as well so people can take a look at it. And they have heirloom seeds, and they have, as far as from what I understand, one of the largest varieties in the world, literally. So if you want to start there to gather your seeds, then do so. And then make sure that you obviously go through everything that you need to learn how to garden and save the seeds. So then you can perpetuate your own seed bank. Because there might come a time very soon where you won't be able to, say, get distribution from someplace all the way as far away as Iowa, which is where where this particular seed bank is located. But seed banks are also something that you could organize at your local church as well. You could also have a class also at your local church on gardening, how to save seeds, make sure to teach the little ones, get them started early as to the importance of growing their own food and being self-reliant. And I honestly wouldn't know any church that wouldn't be fully 100% behind doing classes like that. So that's seed banks. Community gardens. A lot of times in cities you will have a small area segregated off for a community garden, where usually what it is maybe 2 or 3 vacant lots in a city. Maybe they've sectioned off a portion of a city park, usually centralized. And you see these community gardens in, obviously we're not talking major metropolitan areas here. We're talking about cities and towns that are probably up to maybe 40, 50,000. I'm not saying that towns above 50,000 don't have community gardens, because I know that there are some. And they might have multiple community gardens, but you might have to be a part of or have your domicile in a particular section of a city in order to use, say, that community garden. And if there isn't one in your city, then build one. I'm looking into a vacant lot in the town where I'm at to find out if I can use that for a community garden, and at least get the gentleman who owns the lot some kind of yearly rent, basically, from using it in that way. And of course, having a garden, or even doing raised beds, as long as they weren't something like cinder block concrete, even raised beds would be something that would be fairly easy to put up, and if need be, take down if someone did then want to later actually build a house on. You can do that on a regular basis and find these city lots, go to the people that own them and say, hey, would you be willing? There's also a gentleman that I know who was working in the Quad Cities, which is western Illinois, eastern Iowa. And what he was doing was he was literally going around and just ninja gardening. And that's a way of finding vacant lots and then either planting bushes and trees and various different things that give production, and then just going back every once in a while and tending to them. Now, he kind of got famous for that, and so because in the beginning the city was kind of like, what are you doing? And then when he showed them what he was doing, and he showed them that he was creating basically one of the largest, and I think you can find this information online, he created one of the largest forest gardens inside a city limits. And I'm pretty sure I know he's out of the Quad Cities. I can't for the life of me recall his name, but actually I did meet the man for a short period of time. He just showed me a few things, told me what he was doing, and then that was kind of it. It was a very short meeting. But point is that when you're talking about community self-reliance and organization, you want to look for these opportunities that no one's taking advantage of. And planting fruit and nut trees in cities, along with bushes, raspberry bushes, so on and so forth, not only will it attract positive flora and fauna, meaning birds and bees and promulgating insects, butterflies, all that fun stuff, but it will also create a resiliency of your community for food shocks. Maybe not obviously for everyone, depending on the size of city, but if it is a small town and everyone gets involved with focusing on creating forest gardens, creating community gardens, getting together and learning how to preserve the food, well, then you have a community that is food self-reliant. It wouldn't matter what would happen to the supply chain, to grocery stores, they would survive. And that's exactly what we want to make sure everybody gets to, and make sure that everybody can perpetuate. So, okay, so that's community gardens. A link that I put in for YouTube was this one. Let me bring it up here. And this was the point about that it doesn't take much space. So this community garden is, well, sorry, this profitable garden. It's not a community garden. It's his private garden, but it's only on 1 acre. And I just wanted to show the size of this here and what he's done. I'm not going to play all of this, but I just wanted to show kind of what it looks like and give you an idea of what you can do on 1 acre. And he obviously, as the video says, he's clearing $200,000 off of 1 acre of food. And what he does in the end here, I think it actually shows, he has like a little storefront here where he just puts up that's, has road access, and he just allows people to come in here and park and then come and buy the food. And that's perfectly fine. And if you live in a city, however, there might be some stupid thing about some ordinance or whatever that you might have to fight them about one way or the other. But if you make your production, or sorry, if you make the distribution of your production in a way that, say, a private member organization, and you make sure that you do that from the beginning, that the people that are your customers sign a waiver. You could even make sure that they pay in silver. And if they don't have the silver, you can turn around and sell it to them, which is kind of funny getting your own silver back. But at least it makes sure that the transaction is protected under the common law as an actual, true contractual agreement, not some dual trust relationship with fiddling around with monopoly money called Federal Reserve notes, right? It would be an actual proper contractual agreement in the common law, which then could only be adjudicated at law, meaning meaning the quote unquote Roman civil law idiots couldn't come in and say, well, we're going to charge you with this or that because you're running such and such and whatever. And you say, no, I'm running this. Everybody has a contract, a lawful contract, because they paid, gold or silver, and I gave you notice, right? So before you do something like this, write up a notice of understanding and intent, which of course, if you don't know how to do that, there's templates on the VSOF for that. And coupled with maybe portions of your doc set, like say the revocation of power of attorney and your declaration of nationality and maybe the KW and a few, possibly the fee schedule. It depends how, how hard you want to put it in their face. But the point is that you make it known what you're going to do, and you make it known that what you're doing, there's nothing they can do about it. Make sure that it's written like that. Make sure that it makes sense. Make sure that the notice of understanding and intent is clearly laid out. And I might at some point in time, if somebody wants to work with me to do that, I'd be happy to help create a notice of understanding to get that going. Okay, so from that, the aspect of gardens, I do have another little video that I put in here. This was just one that I found regarding high profit crops. Now, this is something that's more of a, if you want to make money at what you're doing, instead of just making sure that it's all based upon food and food saving. I'm just putting this in here as a point to say, look, this doesn't have to be some sort of charity event. You can learn how to grow crops that you can sell for a lot of money, but you can do it from a standpoint of a community and a cottage industry and still be quite profitable with it, and even to the point where you can start hiring employees and make a nice little business out of it. Perhaps make it your entire career if you want to. It's up to you. But I just put this in here is to make a point that there are plenty of crops out there that are very profitable, and you guys can watch that at your leisure. Okay, so next thing about food production, raised beds. Raised beds are very important because you can build them anywhere. They can also be used and built for metal. And I put up a link. This is the best design, the simplest, fastest, least expensive, but most durable design that I could find. It could probably be improved on a little bit, but anyway, point being, so this is what they look like. If you wanted to set up your community garden in a way where you gave each member or family or whatever a single raised bed, you could make them, a certain size by size. You could make them 8 by whatever. You could make them a 10-foot if you wanted to, and then you could put the rows in between, and you could either put mulch down or you could just rip up the sod and make sure that this is a nice walkway, or you could put down concrete block if you wanted to get expensive with it, but you don't have to. And then give each group or community their own, or family, sorry, their own raised bed. And he goes through how to build these. I'm not going to, go through it totally. I can just kind of very quickly show you what, in the beginning, what they look like. So it's the idea that there's a metal here connected to a wood frame bottom, connected to a wood frame top. And then in this metal section, what you're doing is you're then cutting out the panels, the metal panels here that go vertically, which then hold in the soil. So basically, 4 metal corners, you have the metal panels here, and you can just overlap them, and you drill them in on the other side to make sure that they're tight. And then you do your, basically what's called your spaghetti gardening, where you make sure that you layer, or sorry, not spaghetti, lasagna, wrong pasta, that you layer the soil underneath to give you all of the things that you need for the most nutrients in that raised bed. And we've done other classes on that in the Self-Reliance quadrant regarding how to do raised beds. So I won't get into that any further. Okay, so from some of the aspects of raised beds, you can also obviously make sure that people have eggs. So that means chickens. And most all towns, even under Roman civil law, will let you have chickens in your backyard. Maybe not a rooster, but chickens for sure. So look up your city ordinances if you live in a city. But if you don't live in a city, then build whatever you need to out in the country. Just get it done. Just be mindful of your neighbors regarding the rooster issue, because some people need to sleep at a time when a rooster is squawking wildly. So just make sure that that is not going to be an issue for anyone. Or if you wish, you can write up a letter. See, if you can't find any ordinance or anything about it, you can write up a letter, again, a letter of understanding and intent to whatever Roman civil law authority that you're around or that might come to pester you regarding what you're going to do, and then serve them the letter with a copy of your KW, your revocation of POA, your fee schedule, and or your declaration of nationality, and then wait for their reply. I also put in a few small builds here for chicken coops regarding some simple builds. There's some big and some small. I didn't put them all into the chat here, but I'll throw some in. Oops, hold on. There we go. And some of the chicken coops are elaborate. Some of them are not. Some are simple. Some are have long runs in them.
The ultimate backyard chicken coop.
And so this is one. This is a fairly easy, simple one. It has a easy way to get to the nests on the backside, which you can probably see better here. You can store your stuff underneath, and then he has a run so the chickens can come out, and you can put chicken wire up and keep them in a specific area if you want to. Another way, or another one that I saw regarding the run situation, I think was the next one. Let me look at that, just to make sure not to blow you guys out of the... Okay, so this one, okay, so this is just one that's kind of up off the ground here, but he has kind of a larger side area to keep them in. But from this larger back area, you can then have them go through what are called chicken runs, and that's the last one that I wanted to show you guys, where you can kind of force the chickens to go where you want them to go, and so that way that the information, the fertilization of their poop and whatnot can be kind of distributed in a general area, and or you can also make them follow. Now what this woman did, she made them follow all the way around her garden area, which let me kind of get to that because I was kind of shocked as to like she almost made like a chicken train track here where she forces them to go all the way around like the backside of her garden so that when she does do things in her garden, she can just kind of grab scraps or whatever else and just throw it right in here to the chickens to kind of feed them, which I thought was an interesting way of doing a chicken run. And of course, then if you want your chickens to actually be out in your garden, you can say, hey, chickens, okay, here, go in the garden, but we don't want you any other place. So you can just put up a little plastic fence like this and decide to make them go wherever you want them to go. Or if you want them to just fertilize a certain area, you force them into that area and not another. And yeah, so setting up chicken runs like this is a good way to keep them organized. And obviously, again, if you want to sell eggs, doing things like that inside a city limit or anywhere, I would suggest setting up a private private member organization and have people create a contract for that. I do have there are a few people in the VSOF who have already set up private member organizations. I can, and if anybody wants that information, I can certainly make sure to contact them and ask them if they'd be willing to redact their private member organization form or contract, whatever they had. Which I think he did that already, so I'll have to check. So if anybody needs that, I'm pretty sure that I already have at least a good redacted template for a private member organization, which then you can elaborate out as to whatever it is for you. What he did it for, I believe, was actually a dentistry. So, but anyway, the form can be altered to fit whatever we need. Okay, so that's your chickens. Next thing for food production is local farms and farmers markets. So find where your farmers markets are in the area. See if there are any local produce stands around. Sometimes you'll find those just kind of popping up at the corners of gas stations or abandoned parking lots. And if you have production, then you can go to, say, a large parking lot, a grocery store parking lot, or whatever other kind of parking lot you want. Say, hey, would you mind if I put up a small tent out here and sold, veg or whatever? And I've seen also farmers stands that are not even manned. They just have little bags out there or little baskets, and they just have the prices on things, and they just go by the honor system. And depending on where you live at, that's perfectly fine. If you live in a community that's honorable, you can totally do that. If you live in a community that's not so honorable, I wouldn't suggest doing that. So, use your brain. So, what do the farmers markets sell? Take a look around and see what they do produce. Get to know the farmers, the local farmers, and see if you can possibly go to them and do a pre-order even and say, hey, at the end of this season, could I pay you now for such and such amount of product and lock in the price? Because any amount of pre-time that you can do that, say even a year in advance, you're going to get at least a year ahead of inflation. And inflation is a real problem right now, and it's getting ridiculous. Or you can say, look, I'll pay you so much silver or gold for the pre-order and make the transaction out of, in the common law and out of commerce in the filthy Federal Reserve note. And if they don't have silver to pay with, then again, you can do the thing with, hey, I'll sell you the silver and then I'll, give it right back to you for the transaction. And then the two of you can actually write out what's called a bill of sale, a lawful common law bill of sale, describing what was the transaction, what was sold, so on and so forth, so that both of you have a copy of it, and so it's a lawful contract. And if you can't find a farmer's market, you could also organize a farmer's market, obviously, if it's in a small town or a rural area, and go to local farmers, say, hey, what do you have? Do you produce such and such, this and that? If you do, would you like to be a part of this farmer's market? Or if you don't want to bother with coming and setting up a stand, what could we come and purchase here from you at a reasonable reduced price so that we can at least help you out a little bit, but that also we can also make a profit, so it's worthwhile for us to come out here and come get it. And then again, you're making connections, you're interacting with people, you're talking about what the importance of these topics are. And again, feel free to print out the VSOF information flyer, which is, again, the link is at the top of tonight's organization. The contact flyer here, you can feel free to download it and print out as many as you want to and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. This is the organization or the larger organization that we're part of, the Vocational Science of Freedom. This is what they promote. And this is what we're doing here to help our community be more self-reliant and self-sufficient. And I honestly wouldn't know there's no farmer that I know personally that wouldn't be interested in at least talking to you and or probably having you sit down have a cup of coffee with him, or maybe he might even feed you a meal and say, yeah, let's talk about this and see what you can get done. So that's farmers markets and local farms. Next thing is your county fair. Now, if you live in a little bit of a rural area, or as long as, again, it's not some major metropolitan situation, if you live in a fairly rural area, your county fair is a good place to meet farmers and interact. It's also a good place to set up a booth and say, hey, we're looking for people who want to help with a community garden. We're looking for people who want to help with a seed bank. We're looking for people who want to get signed up for the local militia. We're looking for people who are willing to serve on a 25-member grand jury. We are looking for people to be interested in and come to classes, whether you just bring them straight here to the Vocational Science Freedom online classes, or you have your community meetings and have it that way. So county fairs are a good place to do that. And usually everybody's pretty happy and cheerful at a county fair because they're enjoying the fair. And county fairs are also a good place where you could set up a booth if you wanted to sell various different things. It probably not so much just straight produce, because there's usually a lot of food vendors at county fairs so people are just eating things. They're not really coming there for their produce, but you could set up a booth for more expensive products, like the example that I gave for the high profit crops. So that's something that you could set up a booth for that then people would come into that you could also make some money off of and then have more interaction that way. So that's county fairs. Now we get into food storage and food preservation. So after you create your food, how are you going to preserve it? Well, basic things that you're going to be focusing on are having your root cellars, so just having it cool. So things that can be kept cool in a root cellar for a long period of time and be able to make it all the way to, say, fully a next season. Now, obviously, not everything will do that, but a lot of things will do that. You can definitely store carrots for over a year if you do it properly. You can store some varieties of potatoes that long. You can store beets that long. I'm not sure if you could make an onion go a full year. You might be able to. Garlic, also many different types of squash will keep for over a year. In fact, many types of squash will keep for over a year, even if they're not in a root cellar. And anyway, there's a lot of different things. So you get a list of everything that you can keep or should be able to be kept in a root cellar. So then you have your selection of what you need to go get for your seeds first. So you say, okay, this is how much I'm going to need. This is how much we're going to plant of this. And this is where we're going to be able to put it. Now, if no one has any idea of what a root cellar looks like or what it is, a root cellar is basically an area cut out underground that is always kept at a certain temperature, about 40 to 44 degrees, something like that, depending on your insulation and how deep it is. So, give you an idea, this is just a look at a root cellar in construction. What they did was they were using simple masonry of just stone, of what they obviously had around the area. And so they made obviously the walls underneath here first, so this is dug out underneath. And then what you're seeing here is the wooden frame that they're using to put the entire roof on, the stone roof on, by making sure that it has the proper curvature and then laying the stone in and then letting it dry. And then when it fully dries, they will then remove this out from under and because the stone is in this arch shape, it will push against itself and it won't collapse in. So that's a great way. If you have stone like this available to just use it, that's a great way, an inexpensive way to build your root cellar. And it's also a way to build a root cellar that will probably last for a couple hundred years, which honestly, or even longer, which is honestly what you are going for. If you're going to build something like a root cellar, make it large enough to be worth your time. Build it so that it's never going to fall down, at least long after you're gone. And make sure that it has proper drainage. Make sure that it's not in an area that's going to get water flowing into it. Make sure that you dig it deep enough, right? Make sure you go through all these things before you start your project. Now, there's other ways. You don't have to do it like that. Here's a more kind of modern idea of using cinder blocks. And I know this picture is a little small, so I'll kind of blow it up. It'll get fuzzy. But this, you could do this. You could use a cinder block wall. So you dig out your area, and obviously you wouldn't want to do this by hand unless you have like a dozen people helping you. So you can rent a backhoe or find someone that has a backhoe. Dig out the hole. Know your dimensions, how big you're going to build it. Know about how much food, again, you want to put into it. So like I said, make it the size worth your while. Actually, the size of this one to me looks almost too small. If you're going to dig that hole, I would have made this at least twice as long. But to each their own. So just the point is, you can do it with cinder blocks as well. Cinder blocks are not that expensive. And then you can either learn how to, obviously put the masonry in themselves, or you can hire someone to do it. That's entirely up to you. And I couldn't find, for the life of me, I looked for a very long time the other day, I couldn't find a picture of a community root cellar, because I've been through many different countries in Europe. And what I found fascinating was that in a lot of cities in Europe, you will come upon like this, what looks like a big hill, kind of in the middle of town. And sometimes it's very strange because it'll be like in the middle of town and then it'll have like 20 or 30-story buildings next to it. You're like, what the hell is this thing? And you start asking around, and it turns out that these were large town root cellars where the whole town would store their food for the season. And these were usually set up in conglomerates, and multiple merchants got together and said, hey, we need to build this thing. And then they did. but there's still a lot of them are still standing. So, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is that when you do a project like this, you might as well make it large enough for it to be worth it. And if that requires you getting your entire community together to do it, to build one, then get it done. Because a root cellar is something that does not require electricity. You will be able to use it forever. It is, you could lock it down, meaning that there's no way that your food can get stolen unless somebody wants to sit out there and try and dig a hole down, which of course by the time they start doing that, you can shoot them in the head. Um, so it has the benefits are multiple as far as creating and building a root cellar. So again, make sure you want to build them for a lifetime. I did have this article that I found. This is just a Mother Earth News article. If you guys have never been introduced to Mother Earth News, it is a good website, and you can sign up for their. I think might be a weekly or monthly newsletter, and they're very good newsletters. They give all kinds of wonderful information about homesteading, self-reliance, and this one was one that I just picked generally as a good one to give people an introduction as to what a root cellar is, how they work, so on and so forth. But you can find more information at Mother Earth News as far as root cellars and any other place you want to, as obviously there are builds that people have done on YouTube as well for root cellars. I didn't grab any this time, but anyway, the information is completely out there. I also have information regarding how to build root cellars in the VSOF online mega folders as well. Okay, so root cellars is one way to preserve food. Next one, community canning stations. So you can have your own canning station. What you're going to want to make sure that it's done correctly are large pressure cookers. That's the easiest and fastest way to get done. Yes, you can just do a hot soak for some things, but other things really do and should be pressure cooked. I suggest everybody make sure that they pressure cook their beans, because green beans can be something that if you accidentally mess up, you can kill yourself with botulism. Now, I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's easily taken care of. But the point is that just understand that there is a risk there, and just do what you need to do to learn how to do it correctly. So, and there's all kinds of information. There's endless resources of information about how to can. So I'm not making a point of this, but of getting into how to do it. This is more where to do it. So if you have a large enough house that has, say, more than one range, okay, fine. You could do it at your house with a couple of people and have it be kind of a production line. If you don't have that, however, find a location that has multiple burners, multiple ovens, multiple ranges. And that's going to be your churches, your VFWs, and if you can, you could even set it up in a private barn sort of thing. Or some people do have private barns where they do have multiple, like a large kitchen area set up already for production of various different things. Yeah, I'll get to that, Lieber. Actually, you know what? I did forget to put that in there, so I'll make that another section here. Lieber just brought up the fact that you can do they're freeze dried as well, and I have seen some equipment for freeze drying. If anybody wants to, whoops, I put that in the wrong thing. If anybody wants to find any links really quick for freeze drying, you feel free to do so and put it in the chat, and then I will put it into the class outline here so that we can have at least some links. Because some of the freeze drying equipment that I've seen, well, let me get done with this and I'll get back to it. So anyway, so we have churches, VFWs, private homes, private barns. You can set this up at. What you want to do for canning is that you want to bring a lot of children in. Not that you're going to be using them for child labor, but because you need to teach them how to do this. So you bring in the children, you bring in your friends, you make sure that you go through everything that you need to do in a consistent step-by-step process and set it up as if it were a assembly line. So we bring the things in, we wash everything, we cook everything, we cut everything, we measure out our spices, we measure out our vinegars, we measure out our liquids, we measure out da 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 da. We sanitize everything, right? You go through all of these processes, make sure that everyone that's there learns each of the processes, and make sure that everybody goes away with a pleasant experience, so that you make sure you can do it next year, and then the year after that, and 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 you get the point. So, okay, thanks for that. Thanks for the link, Libero. I'll grab it and stick it under the outline so people have an idea. And so from that, so you got canning, so we got root cellars, we got canning, then drying stations. Now this is obviously drying is different. These two things are different, drying from freeze drying. So drying stations. So some of the things that you can do for drying, you can do solar drying. It's inexpensive. I'll give you guys the link here. And so you have situations like this is a good example where you have trays and you have basically an area where now he has this on a rotation, or actually no, these aren't rotation. So these are fans that's bringing in and moving air through this hot area until they're dried out. And what I don't know if he's sun drying something specific, but okay, so here's a larger area or something larger that you could do this with. And what you need is circulation, heat, and sun, and that's pretty much it. But this particular video is a good introduction to solar drying. It goes through your 5Ws, your who, what, when, where, why, and explains that you can do a lot of things. You can dry fish, you can dry meats, you can dry vegetables, you can dry whatever you need, and the processes to do it. I think it has. I don't know if this link has any. This link might not have any schematics in it, but there are plenty of links on YouTube and other places that you can find with schematics. Okay, so here's kind of a very generic look at it. So you have a panel that you're collecting the heat in. So you have this panel, and it has black on the bottom, and it has a place where you can bring air in here. Make sure this is completely able to be cut off from insects, meaning pack it with cotton or whatever else you need to do to make sure that there's no insects that can possibly get into your dryer, or else you end up with a real big problem. So anyway, heat comes in, hot air comes up, and then it passes through all of the trays and then out. Now that's if you just want something very basic. You can put a wind-driven ventilation system in here, something electric. You could even have like a small little solar panel and just a tiny little fan, and just make sure that it blows up and out. And that's pretty much it. And so you're just using the sun to dry your product. And there's another look at it. So there's a lot of different designs, so I'm not going to get into any of the rest of that. But so that's solar drying. The other aspect you can do, or the main reason that you want to do solar drying, is because it's inexpensive and there's easy designs. And so here I did put a few different design builds up here that are available on YouTube. And of course, I'm not necessarily promoting YouTube. I'm just saying that that's one place where you can find some schematics. And then the next one is obviously getting into the freeze drying, and I will grab these other couple links here. Thank you, Libir. I will put them into the document, and so that everybody can make sure that they can use them later. And yeah, freeze drying is a way that is also make sure that the food is completely dry, and you can rehydrate You can rehydrate it later with water, and so you can just warm up water and rehydrate things that way. And so that's a really great thing with freeze drying. With the rest of this, as far as community self-defense is concerned, I think we might go ahead and just save community self-defense for next week. So feel free to obviously download this class outline and go ahead, and we'll get ready, and I might expand it out again. So, but anyway, we'll go over community self-defense next time because we're coming up here on an hour. If there's anything else that anyone would like to put into chat as far as a link is concerned for what we've covered already tonight, you can feel free to do so here in these last few minutes. And I just wanted to say something else that I'll be, again, making sure to tell you all you guys that I'll be updating the rest of the Odyssey, the Vocational Science Freedom Odyssey server with classes that we've done in the past. And some of these are going to be going back almost a year now, but I'll be updating the rest of Odyssey to make sure that it's at least at the same, has at least everything that's uploaded on YouTube. And I'll be also uploading the rest of the information, or the rest of the classes, both Wednesday night open roundtables and Saturday night civics and sovereignty classes onto Odyssey for the foreseeable future until I'm caught up. So just know that some of the classes that are going to be popping up here are not going to be in order per se as far as the timeline, but every time that we do a class, it's always timeless, so it doesn't really matter when you're listening to it. The information is just as important tomorrow as it will be 2 years from now. So, okay. So with that, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I will make a note. Actually, I'll make a note of that right there, Lieber, and I will grab that and just make it a note. I'll put this note into the outline for, because we'll cover that next week. And actually, you and I can have a good back and forth about mutual assistance groups, and we can flesh out the rest of the outline for the self-defense before next week. So with that, also, if anybody else wants to add anything, as always, to self-defense, you can feel free to DM me in the VSOF Gilded server, and then we can add that to the self-defense. And just real quick, so I've got for local self-defense segments, I've got local militia, aka mutual assistance group or neighborhood watch, which I might separate into 3 different things. Understanding your sheriff and getting to know him, we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about how to form grand juries and the fact that you have the right as a community to form a grand jury whenever you want to. Okay. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I hope all the rest of you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, as always. And until next time on Wednesday night for our open roundtable at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, I will see you guys then. And until then, stay safe and stay sovereign.